Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Omega Insight. Today I was inspired by Albert Einstein. I picked up this book a few years ago. It's basically a simplified version of the Theory of Relativity. Broaden my horizons, let's say. So I'm not a scientist. I didn't fully comprehend and grasp all of the equations, etc., but I do understand that according to the general theory of general relativity, which this is the theory of general relativity, matter causes space to curve around matter, and that gravitation is not a force that pulls things to it, but rather a curved field in an area of space under the influence of the force. And the space-time continuum is actually created by the presence of mass. Now, I know that's a lot to say, but essentially we are creating our own time and space. That's what essentially it comes down to. Now, I know in the past I've spoken about from perspectives. When I look out at the world, I look outside today, it's a beautiful day in Arizona, it's in the 70s. My perspective is it's nice outside. Somebody else could be in, let's say, upstate New York, it's snowing. They look outside and say it's freezing outside. Both of us is our own perspective. And that kind of in a nutshell gives you the idea of the theory of relativity, that we're all seeing from things from different perspectives, but we create our own space and time continuum. For me, I experience the outside world, what I'm experiencing, and for someone else, they're experiencing the outside world the way they are experiencing it. Now, to attach time and space to it, that's far beyond my comprehension. However, I was thinking about this. How do I put this in a practical term for my own growth? If I look through my life, let's say, and I'm reviewing the past and I have memories, are my memories as vivid and real as they were while it was happening? Does the sheer fact of me being there, experiencing it, adding my emotions, change the perspective? For example, I remember one time I was at the zoo with my grandchildren, and my sister and my brother-in-law were there with me, and my oldest granddaughter was maybe 3, 4, 5. She's short. And we just happened to be at the day where they were throwing to the lions. They were throwing food to the lions. Well, we're standing there and the food truck is behind us and they throw the food over the fence and the lions are running towards us. So we see, oh, the lions are coming to get the food. But my granddaughter, who was very short, was looking through the gate and she's on eye level. She thinks the lion is coming for her, and she literally panicked, went white as a ghost, froze. I mean, just sheer fear. You could feel it coming off of her. And then I realized, oh, she's terrified. Grab her. And in that moment, I remember thinking, we're at the same event, but we're having two very different experiences. The same event, but we're having two very different experiences. Add the emotion attached to that. Now, when I look back, I think, oh, I had a great time taking my grandchildren to the zoo. When she looks back at that, she goes, just a terrifying moment. The lion came to eat her. So it's all perspective. We created our own memories, even though we shared the moment together. So it got me thinking, if I were working on my personal growth and some of the obstacles that I'm encountering are perhaps moments in my life that I have, we like to call them arrest records, but I have an attachment to, an emotional attachment to it. How do I free myself from that emotional attachment? Well, naturally, we work on the idea of forgiveness and finding value. That's the easiest task. Well, I say easy, it's not really, but that's one method of doing it. Another method of doing it, which I've heard a lot of teachers speak about, is when we review, which I talked about reviewing our day a few weeks ago. When I review my life, I have the option to change it. I can look back and instead of being terrified of an event that was occurring, I can shift the perspective. The event happened. I can't change the event, but I can certainly change my perspective of the event, making it relative to today. Back then, I may not have been as aware or evolved as I am. Not saying that I'm greatly aware and evolved, but I have a different space, a different mindset now. I think differently now than I did perhaps 20 years ago. So if I look back at an event of something that happened 20 years ago and I have an emotional attachment to it, but if I bring it with the eyes that I have today and look at it and say, oh, wait a second, there's value there. I see something differently, and I can release the emotion. I will be able to see the event as an event and not have the emotion attached to it. Relativity, remember, is from my perspective. So the goal would be able to free myself from events in my life using a different perspective. Now, I can't use somebody else's perspective. Naturally, it's my life, the events that occurred. And everyone's going to see it from their own perspective. But if I want to see it from a different perspective within me, I have to change and implement, just for fun, say the theory of relativity. In that space, I can change that time. I can change what was evolving at that moment. When I look back, I don't have to be fearful, let's just say clowns. I can look back and I don't have to be fearful of clowns, because today I can look at it and say, oh, it was just somebody dressed up in a makeup. Back then, rationally, I know that's true. But back then, I know one that I can use, being attacked by a bird, attacked by a rooster. I know logically, when I think back, yes, you can't corner a rooster, they're going to attack you. Logically, I get that. But because I had so much emotional surprise and attack and the bird jumping on me, my perspective was solidified to be in fear. And the way I had to release that was to face my fear. But not all of us can go to a place where you can actually encounter a rooster and repeat the event and not experience fear. For example, those of us who have had near-death experiences, or those of us who extreme harm. You don't want to go back and be in an abusive environment just so you can let go of the memories. You don't want to be around an alcoholic or someone who's physically causing you harm just so you can release that. That's where I think we have the ability to go within our mind and go back to that event and see it from a different perspective without the emotion, from the knowledge that I have today. Now, I know just saying it, I could say back, well, logically I understand from a perspective that person is emotionally distraught and they're attacking me. I know I can see that, but that may not free me from the hold that it has on me. The one thing that I understand about the perspective of the event is when the emotion is attached to it, that emotion is strong, kind of like a hard shell around it. And the way to melt that shell is not by force, not by a long shot. The way to melt that is through love, through compassion and understanding. We speak about forgiveness in Omega a great deal, and forgiveness is to give. Think the Greek terminology, to give. So in order for me to melt that hard shell of that emotional around that shell, the emotional shell around my event in my mind, I need to approach it from a place of love. I know this sounds corny. I know it sounds woo-woo for some of you, but if you think about all of the great teachers and the masters throughout history, the people who've walked on this planet, their main philosophy, teaching has been about love. Love is the key. And I love the idea that even science considers love the force that keeps the neutrons and protons gravitating around the nuclei. Love, they call it love because there's no other way to define it. Love is something that is beyond, I think it's beyond a definition. It's experienced. And that's the one thing that I know that can melt that hardcore when I look at it from love. So relatively speaking, if I want to overcome my own barriers, my own obstacles, the things that are preventing me from achieving growth or greatness or success or love or friendship, anything that I'm desiring in my life, there's always something I'm putting in the way, whatever obstacle it is. If it's a strong hold on me, which means it has a lot of emotional energy attached to it, the thing that can release that and melt away that core is love. Now, how you implement love, that's entirely up to you. It's your obstacle. This is your history. Relatively speaking, we all see love from a different perspective as well. So whatever love works for you, works for you. That's the thing that I feel excited about, because everyone has their own perspective of love, yet we all understand that feeling, that encompassing, warm, beyond my senses, beyond my five senses experience of love. We all understand that. So that's my thoughts on relativity. Take it or leave it. Remember, it's all relative. And I hope that you join us. I think it's in 2 weeks I will be doing another coffee talk. So thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you had a wonderful 3-day weekend, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side of Zoom. Bye now.